Hello, my name is Andrew Baden. I am a sophomore at Patrick Henry High School, and my project was on secret sugars in your food. I came up with this project because on TV there were advertisements for a glucose monitor that you could attach to your arm, and with a phone you could get your glucose level results instantly. Now, this interested me in diabetes and glucose levels in general, so I decided to make my science fair project about it. I really wanted to test how sugar would affect a normal person, because how sugar affects a diabetic is that the insulin the diabetic can produce is very low compared to a normal human, and insulin is supposed to regulate that blood sugar so you don't have an excess of it. So a lot of fruits and vegetables have sugar in them. Most commonly is sucrose, glucose, and fructose. I tested for glucose in my experiments. And so what I did is I got 4 other participants, and I also used myself. Every morning at 8 o'clock I would use an alcohol wipe to sterilize the area that I was going to test their glucose levels, and then I sterilized a diabetes lancet, and I put it into a diabetes lance, and then I pricked my participant's finger. And then I used a test strip that would gather the blood in a specific location, and I would put it into a diabetes reader. This would tell me how much glucose was in milligrams per deciliter. I did this for 5 days. Every day I gave them a different type of apple or something else to go with the apple. So the first day I gave them a whole apple. I tested them at 8 o'clock, and then I gave them the apple to eat. And 30 minutes later, which is about the time it takes for them to digest the apple and get into their bloodstream, then after 30 minutes I would test them again to see their glucose levels, to see how high the spike was. Now, my hypothesis was that a whole apple with cinnamon would yield the least glucose results. Now, cinnamon is important because many studies have shown cinnamon acts as insulin, or a replacement as insulin. It helps the glucose from your blood travel into your cells so you could use it for energy. The next day, I gave all my participants mashed apples. Now, I used mashed apples because it is similar to applesauce, and I just wanted to see if preparing the apple in a different way could affect any of the glucose levels. And once again, after 30 minutes, I tested my participants for their glucose levels again. On the third day, I used baked apples, and then the next day, I used a whole apple with cinnamon. Now, I used 1¼ inches of cinnamon stick, pure cinnamon stick, and on the last day, I used baked apples because those had been my smallest glucose level results so far, and I gave them a 1/4 inch of cinnamon, except I ground it up because it was mainly hard to eat a 1¼ whole cinnamon stick instead of little bite-sized pieces. So my results showed that the whole apple actually yielded the most glucose results. I thought that was very interesting. And also, mashing the apple or baking the apple would not also, but instead yield less glucose results. And baking showed the least glucose results. Now, on my poster, I have a whole apple glucose level chart and a whole apple with cinnamon glucose chart. What happened was I tested them, and when I tested them after they ate the apple, there were major spikes that happened during the trial. Now, when I used it with cinnamon, those spikes greatly decreased. the spike of glucose. So that was very interesting, and it solidified some of the tests that other researchers have done. Now, what happened with the cinnamon and baked apples is the cinnamon didn't do much to mitigate the glucose spike in the baked apples. In fact, the glucose levels on average were higher in the cinnamon trials. So I found that baking apples would be the best if you wanted to have the least amount of sugar in your fruits, at least an apple. Some things I would change in this experiment is participant 4 on the first day had a major glucose spike when after 30 minutes after he ate the whole apple. Now, this could be that some of the apple juice that when he ate the apple maybe was still on his finger, and when I pricked him, that some of that apple juice got into his blood that got onto the test strip. Now, that could very well be. I always made sure to sterilize the area with an alcohol wipe. Another thing that I would change is the amount of test strips I had. I had a canister of test strips, and actually I had 3 canisters of the same test strip brand, and I used one for the first 2 days and half of the 3rd day. I thought I would have enough test strips, but sometimes I couldn't get enough blood out of the participants, so when I ran the test strip over and plugged it into the diabetes reader, it wouldn't give me a reading because it didn't have enough blood. So after the 3rd day, I had to go into another canister of test strips, the same brand. And these levels made the glucose levels dramatically decrease, whether it be 8 o'clock in the morning or 30 minutes after they ate the apple, which was very surprising to me that the test strips could change the results that much. I am not sure if the test strips were older than the other or newer than the other, but it was just interesting to see those results nevertheless. And that is my project, so thank you for your time.